Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to have this event here tonight and have you join us for it. Before we get started, I just wanted to share a little bit about this program and how it came together. So the J.E.D.I committee of AIA Los Angeles was developed about 2 years ago as a new committee in order to put out the voices of underrepresented communities of color. The J.E.D.I committee is a collaboration of AIA Los Angeles, as well as SoCal National Organization of Minority Architects. And it wants to advance the issues of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, things that are really close to my heart. From the J.E.D.I committee, the J.E.D.I Voices series was started. And really the aim of it is to showcase the design professionals of all races, cultures, and backgrounds, their contributions and value they bring to the profession and the built environment. So the idea of putting these events together that focused on Iranian American community was developed by Ziba Qasemi, who's joining us tonight, and I, as we both served the AIA LA board for the last 3 years. Los Angeles is home to one of the largest communities of Iranians in the United States, and we really wanted to highlight the great work that our group of immigrants provides to our beloved city. I want to acknowledge my fellow team members in putting tonight's event together, Hasti Khodabakhsh and Arman Masihi. They worked diligently alongside Ziba and I for the past 6+ months to put today's event together. I also want to acknowledge Fatima Jalali, who joined us recently and worked on all of the graphics for this program. But I would be remiss if I don't acknowledge our amazing AIA LA staff, Corinne Ellingston and Jessica Samley, who have been working alongside with us to promote and get all of the kinks out of our presentations for today. We want to thank ZAV Architects for their sponsorship of this event. And we're happy that this is the third of the series of events of Iranian American focus that we've had. We hope to have many more with your support, hopefully, and your ideas. So the idea of today's program was generated in the hope of bringing knowledge of the great Iranian vernacular architecture, which is very little known in the West. Yet there's a great deal to be learned from the beauty of how it fits in the landscape. And although the systems are low-tech, they are sophisticated in how they are integrated into the building design. To a significant extent, the Iranian architecture has been based on climate, natural light, topography, local materials, and cultural, social influences. This tradition continues to be alive in many of the new urban planning and architectural projects by the contemporary Iranian architects. One can think of this as a hyper-connected architecture, which is when architecture connects to disciplines outside of itself to advance architecture. When architecture gives agency to processes that are not typically considered architectural to gain a greater agency itself. When architecture is connected to its context, from the scale of the landscape to the scale of the individual. And when the architecture is specific to here and now and not then, there and then. It really is a process that takes the wisdom of the region, the natural and the cultural, to formulate design solutions that enrich the lives and well-being of its people with minimal impact on the environment. For today's presentation, Ziba will start with a brief introduction to the Iranian vernacular building techniques and sustainable design strategy. That will be then followed by a case study from the Iran-based firm ZAV Architects, highlighting the firm's magnificent design for Majara Residence in Hormoz, southern region of Iran. Ziba Jan, I'm handing it off to you. But before I do that, let me introduce you to the entire audience. Ziba is the vice president at Unibail Rodamco Westfield, a global developer focused on making positive social, cultural, environmental, and economic contributions to users and communities. She has led the experiential design of airport terminals across the country. Her approach to design brings local architects and experts from the private and public sector together with an internal team of multidisciplinary experts to foster an investigative and explorative process where smart products, technology, sustainable features, and strategies for resiliency all contribute to creating a more connected transportation facility and traveler experience. Welcome, Ziba Jan.
Thank you, Mitra, for the introduction. I'm so thrilled that today's J.E.D.I Voices and Code presentation is focused on Iranian architecture. Good evening, everyone. As Mitra mentioned to you, today I'm going to give you a brief introduction of Iranian vernacular architecture, as I titled it here, Paradise on Earth, which I'm hoping that by the end of my presentation, you would know why. So the struggle to be sustainable has become alarmingly crucial in our time. And that's because we've been experiencing the effects of climate change. But the principles of sustainability really date back to the ancient times when our ancestors made sure that the available resources were used efficiently and harmoniously with the environment. There are really great lessons to be learned from the ancient wisdom. And my short introduction today is really aimed to inspire you to do so. One example is the Iranian vernacular architecture that has always acted harmoniously with its surroundings, both in terms of climate and culture. And above all, it has played a key role in the advancement of techniques for water management, passive cooling, and ventilation around the globe. Next slide, please. So for this presentation, I'm going to focus on a region of Iran called Yazd, as you see on the map of Iran on the left that is highlighted in purple. Yazd has one of the driest climates with the annual rainfall of barely 5 centimeters, which is almost nothing. It is also one of the oldest cities in the world, going back thousands of years. Next slide, please. To give you a big picture overview, I'm going to introduce you to 4 key architectural and engineering technologies that not only allowed the ancient Iranians to survive the harsh desert climate, but it set the foundation for a great civilization to rise. I'm going to start with Karis or Qanat, which is a water management system, followed by Ab-Anbar, Ab meaning water, Anbar meaning head, water reservoir technology. Then Yakhchal, Yakh meaning ice, Chal meaning head, ice house technology. And finally, Badgir, Bad meaning wind, gear meaning catch, water catcher technology, wind catcher technology. Next slide, please. So let's start with the most crucial technology. Throughout the history, if there is one element that the Iranian held in highest regard, it is most certainly water. The area in which the ancient Iranians settled thousands of years ago was rich vast and variegated as it is today, but it was also incredibly hot and dry. You would think that finding water in an arid, harsh climate and then creating lush landscape in the middle of literally nowhere would be impossible. But the ancient Iranians found a sustainable solution to this scarcity. On this slide, I want to first bring your attention to the image on the left, which is a view you would get from an airplane flying to the cities of Yazd or Esfahan. Now, you may ask yourself, what on earth are these mysterious patterns? Are they natural? Are they man-made? Or if you believe in aliens, you may think there are messages from alien species. So it's really not until you start researching that you learn this is a 3,000-year-old marvel of engineering and one of the most important Iranian invention. This technology called carries, and more commonly known by its Arabic word, qanat or cannot, was so effective that it spread both east and westward as far as Spain, Italy, and North Africa. It was added to UNESCO's World Heritage List in 2016 because of its significant contribution to the science of hydraulics. And today, despite the development of modern technologies, it is still in use and it's still vital for people living in many hot and dry climates. The other images on this page show you how it was constructed, how it works, and the monumental scale of it. A carries is an underground channel that carries fresh water from an elevated source in the mountains to an opening at a lower altitude. The tunnels were dug by hand, just large enough to fit the person that's doing the digging. Along the length of a carries, which can be many kilometers, sometimes 80 kilometers, vertical shafts were sunk at 20 to 30 meters intervals to remove the excavated materials and also provide ventilation and access for repair and maintenance. Also, some of these shafts can extend up to 300 meters below ground. For example, the picture that you see in the middle, it actually shows you a comparison of this carries, one of these carries, to Eiffel Tower. The slope of carries was quite sensitive to make the matter even more complicated and had to be precisely calculated. If too steep, the water's downward force would erode the channel. If too flat, the water would not flow. It was truly an art to build the carries, which took decades and centuries to build. You would be amazed to know that presently there are 37,000 active carries in Iran, which if combined can add up to some 350,000 kilometers. And this distance is equal to the distance between the Earth and the Moon. These carries produce 7 billion cubic meters of water for the agricultural sectors. Next slide, please. So up to this point, water was transferred from long distances to the cities and villages. Now it's time to harness the power of flowing water and preserve it. This is when the ancient Iranians came up with Ab-Anbar. Ab-Anbar is a huge underground reservoir built with traditional cement called saroush. It has two openings, one inlet, one outlet at different elevations. Water was filling these tanks from one side and exiting from the other, maintaining a constant flow. It was never still. That's why it could always be kept fresh and drinkable. The architecture of these reservoirs, as illustrated in the section that you see on this slide, consists of a dome or a vault that keeps the temperature cool, a staircase to an underground hallway for public access, and a number of wind catchers to further ventilate the water and keep it cool and fresh. The building techniques used for Alban bars were so sophisticated that the architects had to have great expertise in many areas, such as the pressure of water on the ground of the reservoir, coating of the inner walls, air ventilation, or water filtration. Because of the significant role that these Alban bars played in people's lives, they became an important feature in town planning. They were always designed as one of the largest and most eye-catching structure with details and design influenced by its surrounding architecture. Now, you see that on the picture on the left and also the middle top, where an Alban bar is incorporated into the city planning as part of a large caravanserai complex. A caravanserai is an ancient Iranian hotel serving traveling merchants and visitors. On the lower pictures, you see the staircase to the public access and also an urban versus a field Alban bar. Next slide, please. Okay, now Iranians are really pushing the envelope. And by 400 BC, Iranian engineers knew how to produce and store ice year-round in the middle of desert. They did that by designing an ingenious structure called yakhchal. This ancient desert freezer was simple enough to construct by everyone, regardless of their economic backgrounds. The architecture of yakhchal, as you see on these images, consists of an above-ground cone-shaped structure built with heat-insulating materials, a large pad below ground, an underground storage space, and wind catchers. It usually has a shading wall extended east to west on the south side, and it carries, if you remember the qanat, that runs all the way from the mountain to the north side of this shaded wall. You can see that really well on the picture that is on the top left. During winter, a few inches of water are collected in a pool by the wall, which by morning freezes due to the cold overnight temperature. The ice is then broken and stored inside the yakhchal, and this process is repeated daily for the short winter season until the yakhchal is full. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's look at the fourth key technology that made living in Yazd livable. This technology is called Wadgir, or wind catcher, which is a remarkable structure to ventilate and cool buildings in arid climates. It is very effective when it's designed to be an integral part of the entire dwelling. And many factors play a role in the design of these wind catchers. That could be spatial, physical, or environmental, or it could be based on the type of dwelling, location, wind patterns, orientation, or local materials. A wind catcher is a tall chimney-like structure integrated into its building below to harness the cool breeze and directed downward toward the interior space. You see it in the section on this slide. As the cool wind enters the space, the warm air circulating inside is pushing out through the shaft in the opposite side. A wind catcher comes in a variety of design and shapes, as you see on this slide. It could be uni, dual, or multi-directional. It could be square, octagonal, or cylindrical, depending on the use and conditions. Yazd, the city of Yazd, is known as the city of wind catchers, where you can find hundreds of wind catchers in the city's skyline. This technology works hand in hand with the systems of Kariz, Abambar, and Yakhchal. Next slide, please. So these architectural and engineering strategies weren't only for physical necessities, but they also served a spiritual purpose. Despite their harsh environments, Iranians were able to create renowned lush oases and gardens in the middle of desert. I want to actually bring your attention to the image on the right, which is a great example of one of these oases in the middle of nowhere. Generally, the Persian garden, which is enlisted in UNESCO World Heritage, is arranged in 4 sections as a chaharbagh, which means 4 gardens. It symbolizes the Garden of Eden, as well as sky, earth, water, and plants, the 4 key Zoroastrian elements. Also, the description of paradise has its origin in the Persian garden. The Persian word paridadia refers to a walled garden from which the word paradise derives. The picture on the upper left is one of the 9 famous Persian gardens in Yazd, called Bagh-e-Dawlatabad, which also has the world's tallest wind catcher, which is about 70 feet high. There's a cross-section of the building shows on this slide that shows how the wind catcher is integrated with a pool of water below and living spaces around it to maximize the cooling of the interiors. Other pictures here are examples of beautiful residential gardens and creation of underground cities in deserts. I hope that this short introduction inspired you enough to dig a little deeper into some of the vernacular sustainable system that provides simple but logical methods to harness the already existing natural resources. This was really a teaser for you. And with that, I'd like to thank you all and return it to Mitra.
Thank you so much, Ziba. That was really wonderful. It really made me appreciate the history and culture of Iran, but also want to travel there. I have never been to the city of Yazd, and I've heard such amazing things. It really does encompass so many amazing elements. And you know, as we're sitting here in Los Angeles with having an issue with water and water shortage, you know, the idea of Kariz is like really tempting to investigate if that's a possibility here. Thank you so much. With that, I want to introduce our next speakers, which I am so delighted to have here today. And I want to inform all of you guys that they are in Tehran, Iran currently, where it's 5:30 a.m. So kudos for them for getting up super early in order to make this presentation to you guys and share an amazing project that they've done. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mohammad Reza Odusi, who co-founded ZAV Architects in 2006, alongside with his colleagues. They really seek the urban, economic, and social agency through architecture, with a research and process-based approach to design. Mohammad Reza has worked in architecture and urbanism in Iran, Canada, and Iraq, and has contributed to urban and rural developments in a wide geographical span in Iran. He has also been teaching at different independent and academic design studios through the years. ZAV has won several prestigious awards. I welcome all of you to visit their website. Fereshteh Asadzadeh is a design collaborator and writer at ZAV Architects. She is based in Tehran and as a writer and a documentary filmmaker. She's interested in employing various text and image-based mediums as means of understanding the city. She has contributed to several issues of the famous Iranian architecture magazine, Meimar, and as a member of the editorial board. Fereshteh collaborates with ZAV as a researcher and a writer. Today, Fereshteh and Mohammad Reza will be sharing Majara Residences, planning and design, which aims to define the role of the built environment in its context with charismatic but sensitive natural characteristics, creating balance by protecting the natural environment while helping the local community to thrive. The project has received internationally acclaimed awards, including Arch Daily's 2021 Building of the Year, Taipei International Design Award Gold Medal 2020, and Meimar Award 2022. Welcome, Mohammad Reza and Fereshteh. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mitra. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation. Okay. So thank you for having us today. I'll be presenting Majara Residence on behalf of the ZAV team. So this project is located in Hormoz Island in the Persian Gulf, south of Iran. The island is 29 kilometers away from the mainland with a total area of 42 square kilometers. Hormoz is one of those places where nature is very present in all aspects of life. It has an arid climate, very hot and dry in summers, which somehow dominates all daily activity. It also has a picturesque natural landscape offering spectacular views. What everyone notices is the peculiarity of the colors and the topographic and geographical layers of the island. Because of Hormoz's natural characteristics, color is also highly present in the local culture, be it in their clothing or their home. You can say that the natural colors have also been recently commodified for the tourism economy of the region, and it has helped the island become a famous destination over the past years. As the island is developing as a touristic destination, its natural environment is facing challenges resulting from mismanagement, as you see in this picture, for example. At the same time, we have the local community or the humans living in these natural environments. They are quite marginalized, both in terms of the economy of everyday life and the quality of the constructed landscape within which they live. Here you see the location of the site in relation to the formal boundaries of the city of Hormoz on the island. The site is around 10,000 square meters, and the project that we have proposed contains mainly accommodation for visitors, plus public and service spaces. Majara Residence is an architectural proposal that tries to define the role of built environment in a context with charismatic but sensitive natural characteristics. And it proposes a built environment that aims at creating balance between protecting the natural environment and helping the local community develop. These two are the main goals of the project. To do so, it focuses on the idea of hyper-connectedness, the connectedness of architecture to its context in various scales, from the scale of the individual to the scale of the landscape. In staying connected to the context, the project starts from the site, which is shown in this image. Here you can see that the site you can see the site next to its natural environment, which is the coastal line of Hormoz, and it has some existing vegetation. When we look at the immediate natural backdrop of the project, we see a porous green fabric consisting of native species of trees. These trees make up a nice pattern from above, but what's important about them is that they are scattered organically in a way that different flows of nature, including the native animals and also plants and other natural elements, are not obstructed by them. The configuration of the project is very much informed by this natural field condition. The erected architecture is not a standalone object, but a field of spatial possibilities, porous enough to contain the natural flows of flora and fauna. This architectural field is imagined as a neighborhood of programs, which are structured around the central public plaza on the upper terrace. We have the public facilities and amenities such as library, art residency program, and the cafe and restaurant here. And here you see the lower terrace. The accommodation units for the residents of the complex stay are organized around 3 staircases, which connect to the upper terrace. Therefore, even though Majara is intended as a private accommodation, its spatial program is public and open to all. It also doesn't obstruct the flows of both local people and visitors. This spatial organization allows the circulation of the sea breeze in between the colonies, facilitating ventilation. Inspired by the texture and granularity of the soil on the island, the colonies of the constructed portions of this neighborhood-like field are architecturally imagined as an aggregation of spatial molecules. You can see how they are connected together in this picture. So small-scale granular units join together to create this field. The units can have openings in 4 different spots in order to connect to other units and shape colonies. There are different but limited configurations of colonies inside Majara, which together create the whole field. So now we have a spatial organization that has established a structural connection to its surroundings. The next question is how to define a spatial unit that is similarly connected to its context. The genome, or let's say the archetype of this molecular configuration, is inspired by the tradition of construction within the region. Borke is a water reservoir, similar to what you saw in Ziba's presentation. It is a structure that is very sustainable and resilient, and it's a very good architectural solution for the arid climate of the region. Its passive system controls the amount of sunlight with a curved and less exposed outer surface. It also controls ventilation because it has very carefully designed openings. The thick walls have a high thermal mass and reduce temperature fluctuations inside the structure, keeping the water cool in the reservoir. So the same curved surface, openings, and thick walls are present in the spatial units of Majara. This chart shows the times when active AC is necessary for comfort, despite all the introduced architectural solutions. The periods are shorter in comparison to common building methods. As I mentioned before, Hormoz has an outstanding topographic landscape, as in the background of our project. The spatial units inspired by the bokeh have different sizes, heights, shapes, and crest forms, and they create a diverse skyline. They harmonize themselves with the surrounding geography in order to connect with it. The formal connection of the architectural proposal is further enhanced through the use of a color palette that is tuned with the natural landscape. Hormoz is called a rainbow island because it has so many colors. The application of this polychromic palette to the raw morphology of the domes becomes a turning point to give a certain level of livelihood to this constructed landscape. So now what we have at hand is a hybrid condition where the boundaries of forms, meaning the domes, are not identifiable anymore. You can see in the plan. It is as if the colored domes transform to volumetric colored patches, creating something in between that is neither the color nor the form. Let's look at a perspective section of what we had at hand as the initial form composition of the domes. The form has a series of holes. Let's now imagine that a sticky and live liquid sets off to conquer our form, both from the inside and outside. As such, in the first round, a section of the volume transforms to a reddish flesh, both from outside and inside. At the verge of the next hole, the gluish liquid changes color to, let's say, yellow. Then the next part becomes a yellowish flesh. And at the next opening, we have another change of color. And then another, as if we are in a state of a psychedelic trance. And in this state, the form becomes a living entity in a sort of colorful metamorphosis. And this is how it is, as if the natural landscape is replicated in an organic yet constructed fashion. In the next step, we come to the construction and its connection to the islands. How can we do that in one of the most isolated regions of Iran, where construction materials and trained workforce are limited? Our solution was using earth. Earth is a material available everywhere on the planet and even in space. Round earth can be resistant enough without a deep foundation, without any piles. It is easily demountable and can therefore be considered a zero footprint structure. To use round earth, we employed a technique called the super adobe. The spatial units are made using the technique innovated by the Iranian-American architect Nader Khalili, which you see in the photo. The method consists of superimposed layers of sandbag that create domes and other structural forms if necessary. Building on this particular tectonics, we have adopted a low-tech construction technology that could be applied to the erection of the molecular structure with the help of the local craftsmen. The walls and even foundations of the domes are made of soil and sand. Water and sand are both available on the island. Most of the sand comes from the dredging sand of the main dock of the island, so transport costs were reduced even more. Cement is used for increasing the adherence of sand inside the sandbags. Our comparisons show that the project's cement consumption was less than a third of common building methods. The same thing applies to steel. We have avoided building a large or tall structure and downscaled the building so that its construction becomes possible with the technology and human resources of the island. A big share of the project budget has been earmarked to labor costs because the crafted technique requires cheap, locally available material and bigger than usual man-hour in the amount of work. Throughout construction, 50 untrained workers were offered a steady job and became skilled in different fields of construction. The project bears the trace of the craft in its aesthetics and accepts imperfection in its appearance, similar to the vernacular architecture of the region, which you see on the photo in the left. The result is an architecture mingled with the craft of the empowered people of Hormoz, rooted to earth, even through its wall and foundations, blending in the landscape and embedded in its surrounding, letting everything pass through, be they natural elements, plants, animals, and humans. We like to think that a joyful, familiar, yet new architectural and spatial experience is created. And this was done not only by using environmentally friendly building methods, but also by letting the natural environment influence the design process. And on that note, I guess we are done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farishta John. That was beautiful. It was really nice to see such an amazing project that really talks about its surrounding, and it's on an island, which makes it even more difficult. And I love the idea of, having people who work on it that are local. I mean, all of those aspects are really amazing. Thank you. So I am going to go open it up to questions. Anyone in the audience, please feel free to either raise your hand if you want to speak your question, or type it up in the chat. I think it's really a unique experience for us to have Mohammad Reza and Farishta here with us, sharing such a unique project and really trying to learn more from them about it. So there is one question from Anne Riggs that I'll ask and start from. What is the construction technique for the top of the domes?
Thank you so much. I think first I have to thank you for inviting us to this presentation. The technique of the top of the domes, depending on the height, is the same from the down in lower domes, but in larger domes, which are which you can say they are innovative ones. They are ones which are out of the order of Nader Khalili's super adobe. They have steel structure, which is connected to super adobes, and then a cement layer covers everything as a coat.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I have a question for you guys. How do you guys see the relationship between the environment and the local community? I think these days for us, as we are thinking more holistically about our architectural experiences, as we're thinking about the communities we're going into, we're really trying to combine that idea of the environment and the communities. It's much more prevalent here than it was even 2-3 years ago. How do you guys see that on this project?
I will answer your question, I think. We see community, we see people part of the environment. We are not apart from each other. We are who discovers environment. We are taking care of environment because of ourselves. We are part of it, and we have to be sustained to preserve environment. Otherwise, we are gonna destroy environment. In such a project, people of Hormoz, which were poor, they were living in stressful situations. They had to be part of the project, that they were part of the environment, and they have to take benefits of such a project to assist the building of this project and manage the impact of such a project, because tourists come to the island has limited resources are very intact and beautiful, but they had to be strong enough to get along with our perspective. Otherwise, when they are poor, they don't care about earth, they don't care about environment, anything. So community is one of the most important part of the environment. We are creatures. We are not very different from animals.
I really like that. And we're all connected. I mean, there's that famous Iranian poem that talks about, how each of us are connected to each other and each of our cares is connected to each other. I'm curious now that you said that, I just want to pose this. Have you kept in touch with those, the community, and how the project is going, and how is it, how long ago was it completed and how is it looking today?
First, are you gonna answer?
Sure. We are still working in the islands. We have 2 other main projects on Hormoz. One of them was built in 2017, and the other one the same year as Majara. So we've been there for quite a while, working with the community and trying to incorporate their share or their benefit in the projects. The last project is called Typeless, and it is a sort of community center or a center for empowerment. What it does is it's a flexible building where the space can be used for different purposes, and its job is to gather the community to find out about the problems on the island and try to solve them collectively. So they do programs for environmental issues. For example, there are a lot of stray dogs on the island, and they hurt other animals. For example, there are very beautiful gazelles on the island, and next to this very beautiful landscape, as we had it in the presentation, it's a very charismatic landscape. So what they did was to, with the help of vets which came to the island, they castrated the dogs, so to control the population, and it was a studies program, and they did it all together. And this also works in other issues, social issues, and whatever problems they might have with the visitors, they gather together and try to solve problems. And this has been going on, and it still is, and we hope that it continues.
That's lovely. It's lovely to hear that you guys are continuing your work there, and really, you know, because building those communities and the knowledge for the communities, it's not a short-term thing, and it's great that you have continued projects that you can maintain it over the years. So
it won't work if it's not maintained and continuous, because it's a building has a life that continues after its construction.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ronnie Gore has a question. How much time did you take to finish this project?
This project took 3 years, but it had 2 phases. First, we made the upper truss, the public spaces, and when the client team were satisfied with the system and they saw how this prototype works, we started the second phase, and it took 1.5 years.
Okay.
So the whole thing happened in 3 years. But the presence in Hormoz was a process which took 7 years. We started workshops, we started to observe how the community works. We had some participative stops with local community, and then we made a prototype in the port of Hormoz, and then we moved to Majara, and the whole scenario, which is ecotourism scenario, occurred at the end.
So it might be good for the audience to understand what is the population of this island, approximately.
6,500.
Wow, so it's a really small community. It's such a good example of how you can really build a self-sustaining community with a project that is really caring. Because if the project was built in 3 years and the 7 years total, you spend 4 years with the community, getting to know them and understanding it. And that is really, really amazing and very valuable. Appreciate you. So another question from the audience from Ismar, who says, great presentation, the design fits well within the amazing context. Do you see the same approach used in other places?
What does he or she mean exactly?
Ismar, would you like to expand on that?
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
There were many amazing benefits of that informed the design, from the tree canopies, the earth contour, the shape and geometry, to have thermal mass properties, as well as sort of community connectivity. With those benefits can be applied in different areas, like in Africa or Australia, where they have similar, kind of arid climates, and could be used to house people. That was kind of the context of my question.
Yeah, of course, it can be used, and some people contacted us from States and from the States and Arabic countries, but we are still negotiating, and nothing real hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Esmar's point, it seems like, this concept is something that can actually be deployed indefinitely. Other parts of the world that have similar climates that can really benefit from this rammed earth construction. I know Nader Khalili had his amazing workshop not too far away from here, building the rammed earth. All right,
it might be interesting to you, Ismar, that when Nader Khalili proposed this building method, It was first presented to NASA because they could build this on planet Mars. So if it can be built on Mars, it can be built anywhere on Earth.
That's a great point, Farishta.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing. Thank you.
So Ferial has a question. Is the project fully occupied and what are the feedbacks of the residents?
Unfortunately, the project is not occupied yet because of COVID. They're gonna start it next season. So occupants were friends and people who were invited by the host. And when you are a guest, you have to say it's beautiful, everything is fine. So there isn't a real feedback yet.
Definitely culturally too, you know, if you're a guest, you do not want to say anything. Ferial can you know, knows that as well. So Ronnie Gore has another question. How did you achieve these colors in the exterior envelope? What was the process?
There was a picture that Farishta showed from the island. There are two main colors in geology of the island: a reddish, you can say, yeah, a kind of red, which called gelak. Small mud. The red is gelak. The yellow is the second main color of the island, and blue is from sky and green is from vegetation. And then these palettes has applied to the project as the superimposed layer to transform the form of domes. And Farishta showed the process of the order of the process of color grid, which is a three-dimensional grid. Color comes from the window, pass through the interior, and goes out from the other side and go to landscape, and then it reforms the dome shape of this neighborhood.
We can also explain that technically how it was made. Maybe Mohammed Reza, I can add the explanation.
Yeah.
So the island is made of very colorful soil. There is a beach, you go and it's everything you see is red. It's like you see the red hills. Even the color of the sea changes from the red sand. So color is very present in everything. There's another beach where you go in, it's like a silver, like black sand that you have. It's like glitter, literally. You see it on the ground. And in Hormoz, since the tourists have begun visiting the island, they also make souvenirs with this colorful sand, which is not very good because they take it from there and then they take it outside the island. They also made a land art event a few years ago and used this colorful soils to make a huge, colorful sort of carpet painted with the colorful sand on the floor, on the ground, which was huge and you could see it from the sky. But there is a discussion about it, which is it environmentally correct or not? So many people would suggest to use the soil of the island for the colors of the domes, but this is not correct, we think, because we have a sustainable development expert in the project, and we used chemical normal paint that is used for construction for the outside of the domes.
Great, thank you so much. So the next question is from Sebastian Payanet. Amazing project, 2 questions. Are the sandbags within the wall held in place by the concrete outer inner coating? And since completion, how you have been able to apply what you learned here to current projects?
What was the first question again?
Yeah, sure. Are the sandbags within the wall held in place by the concrete outer inner coating? Or really, how are they held?
No, they are not.
Yeah.
They work in the structure of dome.
Mhm.
They are not held by anything. The cement coat is a coat, similar to plaster coat. It's a cement coat to protect the project for years against humidity, against wind. Wind is harsh there, and there's sand in wind. It works like a sandblast. When it winds, everything gets sandblasted against the wind of Hormoz. It's unbelievable. So we had to put the cement coat to protect the project for years. Otherwise, after 2 years, you have to take everything out and rebuild the project. It was the first question. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
The shape of the arc is very, very strong and resistant because Iran has plenty of earthquakes all over it. And arcs have always remained despite all the earthquakes. And I don't know if this is a myth or they say that if you take an egg which has an arc form and the camel steps on it, it won't break if it's on the tip of the arc. So I haven't tried it, but they say so. It's very resistant and it can stand by its own.
That's great. And Sebastian's second question was, have you been able to apply what you learned here to current projects?
To other projects?
Yeah.
Not yet. We applied, we learned it from other projects in Tehran, a small project. And then we brought it to Hormoz port, the second project, Rong Cultural Center, and this was the third one. And the last one we tried. We are speaking to some new clients for projects, but nothing has happened yet.
Great.
Unfortunately.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for you guys. Like something that can be applied in many places. So Shay Chang asked, do these projects incorporate public spaces for everyday community use in addition to serving visitors to the island?
Yeah, the upper truss is for public activities. There is a library, there is a studio for oral history of Hormoz. There are some CSR spaces. There are some vernacular boutiques for people of Hormoz and their interaction with visitors. They also earn money out of these interactions. And as you see, the whole project is designed like a neighborhood. So people can walk around the neighborhood and they can interact with each other. It's not something gated, a huge gated project which threaten people of Hormoz. This is what we desired. Let's see what's going to happen afterwards.
Well, and what's lovely about that is that, you know, when you go to a place like this, you actually get to interact with locals. You know, you're not separated in sort of like, you know, a secluded area. And I think that it just makes any experience much richer when you get to meet and see people who live there and you know, are part of that community. So that's great to hear.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a resort kind of
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, that's lovely. And I think that is actually an idea from this project, maybe not the materials, maybe not the way the structure is built, but that can definitely be applied in many ways to other types of projects as well. This idea of bringing the community inside and engaging with whatever you are putting in the community. That's something that we've talked about a lot here, as architects, not invading a community, but really trying to be part of it, welcoming to it, and no matter what the project type is.
That's true. So, very true.
Tina Taeb has a question. I'm curious about a couple of things. How does the project impact the local water and electricity infrastructure? Also, does it continue to employ members of the community? I think you maybe answered the second one, but yeah. How do you guys get utilities, the water, electricity, especially on an island?
Yeah, they have, I think, 6 hours sweet water every day, similar to other parts of the island. The island is stressed about water and electricity too, and they are using electricity from the island. There isn't any particular plant for its electricity, so yeah, they use the regular electricity.
We have limited water and electricity in the project, so we have to be very careful about consumption. And that's why these thick walls are very important, because everybody likes to use AC for the better temperature. But the thick walls keep the temperature cool, and the openings are very small, as you can see in the images. This is all not to lose for the temperature to increase inside the spaces. Also, for water, we have thought of different solutions to keep the consumption low. For example, there are no bathtubs in the residences, and this is because no bathtubs, but a simple shower to keep the showers short. And the water that comes out of the residences is treated and used for plants, I think, in the gardens. You can't see the trees yet because they have not grown, but there will be plenty of them, and we have used only like local species that have been that are less in recent years, because there are other harmful plants that take their space and don't let them grow. So these have been planted in the project. And
yeah, and also I'm remembering something. We had tried to produce water out of fog, if you remember. Yeah. Salman, had this prototype, and we worked on it, but it didn't work. The outcome was so limited comparing to the need of the project. But as Farish just said, the gray water, the recycled water is there. The project, comparing to standard construction system of the island, our electricity consumption is 50% because of the construction system.
That's
also
great.
They asked if they employ the members of the community in the project.
That's great.
I'm not sure about Majara, Mohammed Reza, because it has not started operating yet. But in the previous projects, the clients employed all the part of the people who were working in construction to run the projects.
Yeah, because this is a win-win situation. If they don't employ them, they won't collaborate, and they don't let the project breathe. So it's a win-win situation. Community helps the project and gets benefit of this assistance. And as I heard, the 40, 50 people from Hormozian had interviewed to work in this project, and during the construction and working procedure of Rome Culture Center, only 1-2 people goes from the capital city of Tehran to Hormoz, and rest of them are people of Hormoz.
Okay. Do you guys see an opportunity here for this type of construction to be replicated in residences of Hormozian residents?
Yeah, there were some attempts in urban fabric of the Hormoz. One of our construction people, Assad, made a washroom for himself in his yard, and also there is another trial in the town. Yeah, there are some attempts.
I imagine that they see some of the benefits and maybe they'd like to replicate it for themselves.
And they use the color a lot. Yeah, and they use the color a lot. A lot. Yeah. Color is more successful because it's not complicated. It's not heavy. So they took the color and they use it in their exterior and interior, and also in Bandar Abbas, the main port of Iranian Persian Gulf. There are some colorful projects, residencies, housings. There are some colorful projects releasing. Yeah.
Also something about the domes. If you look at the plan of the project, which is also available on the website, you can see that all spaces, be they bathrooms, residences, restaurants, they all fit in a circle in the plan. So it's a very flexible space. If someone decides to build something for themselves, they can just build a circle and use it however they want. It's not, it doesn't need any design or any architect. They can do it themselves.
That's great. I was just thinking it would be great for you guys to take a picture of the city now, and then if this colorful scheme really does take on, like take a picture in 10 years and compare what that looks like. So on to another question from Hasti. Have you had any challenges with local building codes when using this building method in the project?
To be honest, there isn't a lot of building code in such an islands in Iran. These poor remote islands, and you can say kilometers away from the capital, doesn't have serious engineering system. Therefore, we didn't tackle from building code. Only the tourism organization had some codes and some codes about fire system and stuffs, and they were not like such a serious codes comparing to North America.
Great. Appreciate that. You know, as architects, we always learn when we design and build a project. If you had to design and build this again today with the knowledge you have, are there anything you would do differently?
Good question. Yeah, many things. Yeah, to be honest, the section and elevation, especially the section of the project, which is kind of flat. There are 3-4 units which are duplex, but the section is not dynamic comparing to what ZAV showed from yakhchals and stuff. They are very dynamic sections, and we didn't try that. Also about the color pattern, I would love to make it 3-dimensional, not a linear color patches, and make the project more complicated, and make the domes more hidden, kind of deconstructed, you can say. It's
Distort it
very
even more.
Say
What?
that again, Krishna.
I said distort it even more.
Distorted.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I hope
deeper
you
in deeper in sustainable manners, and wilder in appearance.
That's amazing. You know, I really appreciate your honesty about that. And I really hope that, you know, because we all learn from our projects and we can always kind of, so I hope there's an opportunity for you to explore that idea in another project of yours. You know, I know we're coming close to our end of the time. I'm going to ask one more last question, you know, as a parting gift from you guys. Any message or learnings you have for architects here in Los Angeles, knowing that the California climate is very similar to different parts of Iran. If you guys probably don't know, currently we're in a huge water ration. We have a mandate now for lawns and our backyards to limit water because there's such a big issue with that. So any thoughts for you guys to share what you learned from the experiences of that climate for us?
Of course. First of all, as an architect, we are responsible about our discipline, which is about change, innovation, and shifting boundaries of architecture. And shifting this boundary wouldn't happen without entering forces from outside. You know, a candle man wouldn't create electricity. You know what I mean? We have to come outside from our discipline and attack it from the outside and push it forward. When you see architecture in last 200 years, you can't see a paradigm shift. You can't see any shift. We are making Georgian, Victorian, Hakhamaneshi, everything. Building construction system is prototypical. There are many challenges which are essential to Earth. We are essential to our discipline. If we want to bring our discipline back to those glorious years of like 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, we have to be brave and take a lead from the outside of the discipline, and the climate, geography, sustainability, Earth, social forces, they are they can be departing points for such attack, such an attack. So yeah, we have to be open to change as an architect. We have to forget about international style. We shouldn't be sensitive about aesthetic and taste and such a thing. Architecture is not about that. Design and commercial design is about beauty. Architecture is not about beauty. Architecture is about responding needs and problems and changing and making history. And I think during past decades, architecture is static. It's not dynamic. It's static. And yeah, we have to move. We have to forget about what we had, and we have to experience the paradigm shift.
Yeah, reimagine it, I guess, and really kind of step outside of those limitations we create ourselves by sort of how we studied architecture or how we have experienced architecture, and to see it in a very different way.
Yeah, and when you look at Iranian architecture, when you look at Ziba's presentation, Iranian architecture was organic, was natural, you can say. It's been nurtured by, it's been fed by natural forces like wind, fire, water system and stuff, and it was creative at the time. And we have to be creative and adaptive. You know what I mean? We are very rigid against, we think we have to protect our we have to protect our
territory. Yeah.
Territory. Yeah. We are very sensitive about our territory. Yeah. We have to forget about these cliches.
I really appreciate that comment. I think that's really well said. I want to read one last comment from Ziba, who said that one of the audience members loved the project and thought it would be a great solution to propose to Coachella in Palm Springs. So Coachella is a music festival that happens every year in April in sort of the desert area here. And it creates a lot of chaos because it uses a lot of resources. And so some of the things you've implemented, I think that's a wonderful idea. Well, you know, I know it's only 6:24 a.m. there in Tehran. I truly, truly appreciate your time here today with us. It has been so informative and knowledgeable, and it's wonderful to share and see your story about this project. And hopefully, you know, we've made friends today with you, and we can come and, you know, you guys can come back and share what you've done as you move forward. I want to also really appreciate Ziba's presentation and informing all of us of like the rich heritage of this region of the world.